So by the way, today at our alumni session, we had all of ARC 16 since we're in week 10. It's a little experiment. We did a field trip during week 10 and invite everyone for a week, give them a trial in the alumni community. So I think we had like close to 50 people.
Yeah. Nice.
I got it working, and then I was hearing myself, and then I was like, whoa, my brain just like scrambled.
I was wondering what happened. It was like he was going and then he just kind of stopped.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm subbing in for you, when I do my little guest lecturer moment, if there's anything people want from me, if they know who I am and they're like, that guy, he should talk about this.
Oh, people are excited.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, rock on.
You're like a celebrity.
I try to be. I'm not a celebrity.
I always find it weird when I'm talking to someone like on the phone or doing one of our registration calls, and they're like, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. I'm like, my piles are just as big as your piles. Like, I'm just a guy with ADHD with a podcast. It's.
Yeah. What was fun though was my dad is going to the Netherlands. He's actually there right now. And he was like, do you know anyone in the Netherlands that I should say hello to? And I was like, I got to genuinely and honestly say, no, but there's people in the Netherlands who know me because my podcast is downloaded there.
Yeah.
So that's weird.
So we are now officially streaming on the YouTube. I've never done that before, so that's cool. We got it working. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's gonna, ask questions there, but I love experimenting. Experimenting is how we figure out what works, what doesn't work, and we get to, if we're not so attached to the outcomes of kind of what happens, we get to really learn a ton.
Right.
Yeah.
Like randomly being a principal.
Like randomly being a principal. When you first told me that, I thought you were actually messing with me. I'm like,
yeah,
what? You're like, I'm going to be this principal at this Islamic school. I was like, wait, what? Like, aren't you like half Jewish? Not that would I don't know.
I was raised Catholic. I'm mostly agnostic, and I'm married to an atheist Jew. So yeah, it's just, but
yes.
But at the same time, when I talked to them about the shootings in New Zealand, when I went to talk to the kids about that, like I was able to honestly say there are some people out here who can love anybody because this is what I'm doing. Like I'm the former Catholic guy who's married to a woman who's Jewish and is the principal in an Islamic school. So some of us can make those transitions.
That's wow.
I don't know if they found comfort in that or not. I hope they did, but I at least it helped me a little bit, I suppose.
I'm sure that was an extraordinary learning experience.
Yeah.
All right. So we got some questions coming in. And just as a reminder, go live if you are wanting to go live. We got looks like Brianna just logged in on the back end. Let's see. I'm going to just see. Hi, non-video participants. All right, there we go. Cool. So I'm going to get this one started. Go ahead and record it here, and let's first identify a question that we're going to answer, and then we'll dive right into it.
Do you have any preferences?
Yeah, it's Sean's question is kind of interesting. Asked the right because it was the shortest. Yeah, guys, if you can keep your questions as short as possible, that'd be awesome. That'd be totally wonderful. My brain would say thank you. All right. So again, if you want to go live, just put in the chat or in the Q&A, go live. Yeah. So Sean, let us know. Erica, let us know if you want to go live, and then we can officially get this thing started. Jason, if I have submitted a question via email, Jason, if you can post it here, that would be helpful. I do. So actually, all right. So Jason, you're the exception because I happen to have yours on the top of my pile of printed questions. So go buy a lottery ticket today. That's actually a really good question. Okay. You want to go live on there? All right, so Jason is working. All right, I should put like a scrolling like instructions at the bottom of the screen. I mean, I technically could do that. All right.
I threw your Patreon in the chat.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I know it's going to happen eventually. So
all right, we'll start with Sean's. I don't know if he wants to go live, but then we'll just keep the questions coming in. So let me hit record and we'll get this podcast started. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. We are doing our monthly live Q&A. If you're here live, we are in June. If you're hearing this on the podcast, happy July. So we do this every second Tuesday of the month at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. Me and my friend and a colleague and host of the ADHD Essentials podcast, Brendan Mahan. How you doing, Brendan?
I'm doing well, Eric. How are you?
I am still doing fantastic. We have registration today for our summer coaching groups, our last registration. We're doing only 2 groups this summer. So if you're hearing this on the podcast, I think it's too late. We've already started the groups. But for everyone else, if you're still interested, like, wait, registration's already started. It's actually almost over. Go to the website. And for the podcast, I'm going to just make a quick note to my editors. You can probably just remove this part. Okay. So we have some questions that have already come in, and I want to start with Sean's question. I thought this would be a good question that kind of both of us would be kind of well equipped to address. So the question is, what do you feel is the single most effective and easily implemented life hack to help ADHD kids and adults feel more functional on a daily basis?
Am I going?
Sure. Yes.
All right. Permission. Permission is the number one most effective and easily implemented life hack for adults and kids with ADHD to feel more functional.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
You have ADHD, and that's okay. You are allowed to have ADHD. You're allowed to double book yourself. You're allowed to forget where you put your phone. You're allowed to lose track of the things that you're supposed to do in a given day. Those are things that are supposed to happen because you have ADHD, in the same way that I'm supposed to not be able to breathe sometimes because I have asthma. I don't feel guilt and shame when I can't breathe, and I also don't feel guilt and shame when I lose my phone.
So acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that an openness to be okay with making mistakes and trying to learn from them. And I think there's a difference between an openness and willingness to make mistakes, and just saying, oh, I have ADHD, so like I'm gonna screw that up, and oh well. Like there's a fine line. I think people they don't want to use it as an excuse, and it's not an excuse, right? Like when we screw up, we got to own it. Like, yes, it may be because of our ADHD, but it's not just I have ADHD, I screwed that up. It's all right. Like maybe because of my ADHD, I screwed that up. What can I do so I can do better next time?
Yeah, we don't drop the problem just because we have ADHD. That doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
It just means we don't have to feel an extra bonus layer of shame and guilt about that problem. We can avoid those extra bricks in our wall of awful, if you will, by giving ourselves permission and forgiveness around having ADHD.
And I guess the other, to focus on the question, the single most effective and easily implemented life hack, it's more of a chemistry hack, and that's medication. Mm-hmm. Because that really can make the biggest difference. We know that medication doesn't work for everybody, but it works for a lot of people and most people. And and when we say work, it doesn't mean that ADHD goes away with medication. It means that it just makes life a heck of a lot easier. And so just talk to a doctor that knows what they're doing. And I know that also can be a challenge because there's a lot of doctors that don't really understand how to effectively prescribe ADHD medication. So, trying to find a good provider to do that, because that probably is, outside of the other strategies, it is the single most effective thing that we can do, and certainly the easiest.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and another one that's good is the people in your life who don't have ADHD should also learn about ADHD.
Yeah.
Because I think I've mentioned this before on a Q&A at some point, but My wife going to the first training that I ever went to on ADHD with me made a huge difference in our marriage. There's no doubt in my mind that we're still together because she came to that training with me. Because she got me all of a sudden. The things I did made sense. And I had the social proof of someone other than me saying it. That's
huge. That's really huge. All right. So I hope that that answers that question. I'm gonna respond to one of the questions that I have sitting in my hand here. Let's see. And while doing that, Brent, you can maybe pick the next one as well.
Will do.
All right. So this is from Jason, who says, I get confused when presenting in meetings, despite lists and preparation, especially when questioned. How can I fix it?
So confused while sitting in meetings, especially when questioned.
Yes. So confused when presenting in meetings. He says he has lists and he prepares. But it sounds like that when he's questions, he gets maybe flustered.
Mm-hmm. One thing you can do, I'm trying to call it up, but it's a little tricky. I worked with a client who sort of had a similar problem. And in one of the things he and I did is we literally set up an outline, like a chart for him to take notes in. And I'm looking for it right now. So I'll circle back to me in a second and I'll tell you what's in the chart.
Okay. You know, for me, one of the things that I will do in meetings is, you know, usually by Friday, if you look at my desk, it is just like a whole array of like random sticky notes. And these random sticky notes are not like tasks. They are thoughts that I'm having during meetings. And so if someone asks a question, I might first just pause a moment and just write like a word down that it's the noun or about what we're talking about. Right. Because I may have a tendency to sometimes go off on tangents. So if I feel like I might be off track here, I can just look down. I keep my finger on the word that I wrote down. And so that sort of keeps me focused. You can also try strategies around like reflective listening, like say back the question that is being asked. So you make sure you have clarity on that. And also don't hesitate to say, I think the 3 words that people don't use often enough. I don't know. Right? I think that we might feel flustered when we think we have to have the answers to everything. You know, it's an, I don't know, let me get back to you. Or I don't know, but I can try to find out. Right? And then create an action item around what it is that you want to get back to that person about. What else you got?
Here's the chart. So we wrote down in boxes, right? Project, main goals, deadline or deadlines. That's going across the top.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 4x3, right? First row across the top, project, main goals, deadlines. Then first steps, middle steps, concluding steps.
Okay.
Secondary goals. And then we have where to go. So online within sort of the work system of folders and such on the computer or in person. Where do I go for some stuff? And then also who are the people involved and how do I contact them? What's their email? What's their phone number? That stuff. So to build a frame around what's going on. And it works a few different ways. 1, it gives them a frame for thinking. 2, if any of these boxes are empty, he knows he's missing that information. As opposed to if you don't have a structure to it, you might miss the deadline and not write that down. And now you're in a world of hurt because it's due next Tuesday and you don't know it. And we also have a couple blank boxes in there too. Now this is tailored to what he does for a living and your mileage may vary with these different categories and things, but having a little bit of a structured note piece of paper thing that you use or on your computer could help you focus while you're in that meeting. And what do I need to care about? And how do I pay attention?
I think in meetings, I think it's really, really important to put the computer away and use pen and paper for meetings.
I don't disagree.
Right? Because just the way a meeting, I think a good communication in a meeting, I think really requires, unless you're presenting something on the computer, I would highly encourage it be pen and paper. Having a template was, I think, a great idea. Brendan, I know you said it's tailored towards your particular client. Is that possible something that we can share and put on the website for this episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So go to the show notes for this episode. So whatever episode number this actually is when it comes out, ADHDrewired.com/ whatever episode number that is. It'll be 280-ish, I think. So that'd be a great resource. So Brendan, what are you going to do right now in this meeting so you remember to send that to me?
I'm going to write something on a sticky note.
Awesome.
I lied. It's going to be in a Zentangle because apparently my sticky notes are not.
A Zentangle? What is that?
You're supposed to draw on them.
Yeah.
In like a meditative way. One of my clients had them.
Okay.
And he was like, I just need to get rid of some stuff. I was doing a home visit. And he was like, I have too much stuff. Could you just take these Zentangles for me? And I got a stack like yay big. And I was like, sure, I will write notes on them. Because
awesome.
I'm not much of a doodler.
Cool. All right. Jason also had, I think, a follow-up question around the previous question around permission that I actually wanted to answer. And that was about how does permission relate to being accountable? And I actually really, really like this question. So let me take a stab at that first, Brendan, and then I'll let you follow up with that. Okay. So I think that accountability begins with permission, right? Because it really first you have to have vulnerability and trust for accountability. And so if there is something that you are trying to work on, you need to tell the person that is helping you with that accountability that say, I am giving you permission to ask me about this thing. I'm giving you permission when I do this thing to do whatever it is you want me to do, however you want me to respond. I think that is a really, really important part of increasing our self-awareness and really creating a more effective feedback loop with the people in our lives who really do want to support us, to be able to have the permission, because we all, been on the receiving end of the feedback that we didn't ask for, right? And that can be kind of frustrating sometimes. But I think that when it comes to accountability, I think as a coach, the first thing that if I'm going to offer somebody a suggestion, the first thing I will say, may I offer you a suggestion? And then you have to wait for the answer, because I can't just not listen to that and then go into the suggestion, because then I clearly wouldn't be listening, right? Because so if someone says no, then you're like, okay.
Yep, you've done that with me. And I've learned that I have a weird response to that.
Yeah.
If someone says, may I offer you a suggestion? Then it's harder for me to hear the suggestion.
Oh, interesting.
When they just suggest it, I'm like, yeah, cool. And I should totally do that.
So Brendan, in that realm, if you and I are working together and I was coaching you, you would then want to give me permission to say, hey, instead of asking me for permission, I would do better. Would you be able to just dive into it? Yeah.
We just haven't had that come up enough for it to matter. And also, I know it's my stuff. So I'm like, no, it's actually awesome that Eric's doing that. Shut up, Zach. Zach is the name of the voice inside my head that is critical and a jerk.
I was just picturing Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell, who has the really big phone. I
haven't met a lot of Zachs that I liked, so that's why I picked that name.
Oh. I wonder if anyone here is named Zach. Sorry, we like you.
Yeah, I haven't met you, so unless I have, in which case, wonder.
All right, let's see. Is there anyone here that wants to go live? Oh wait, you had your thing, or was that?
Oh yeah, I had a thought on that. On the how does permission relate back to being accountable? Because a piece of this is the risk of, if I'm giving myself permission to fail and mess up, am I not holding myself accountable as a result? Right? That's because that could be in there. Mm-hmm. And one, if there's a problem, then you kind of need to solve it. And I'm not talking about, or let me withdraw and rephrase. I want to draw a line between blame and responsibility, because I think it's really important here. If I mess up and it's because I have ADHD, I'm not taking the blame and guilt around that mess up. but I am absolutely taking the responsibility for that mess up. And so that's like, it seems like I'm splitting a hair maybe, but I'm really not, because they're two very different things. And one of the ideas I've been toying with lately, because I always have a new idea that I'm toying with when I come on this.
This is why I like you, Brendan.
Is this notion of responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. Because we all know that with great power comes great responsibility, right? My Uncle Ben told me that. But I've been flipping that on its head and been thinking about how with great responsibility comes great power, and trying to find the way that taking responsibility for stuff is actually empowering me and giving me agency around solving those challenges and issues. And so it's sort of a flip, but it's really been useful for me and for some of my clients as I kind of play with this idea that blame is not useful, but responsibility is motivating for me. It's important. And so that's a thing to use when it comes to accountability. Then I'm being accountable to myself as well as whoever it is that I'm working with.
Let me ask you this. What do you do when you have a client who is just deflects everything, and you're almost left feeling like, does this person have an inability to like own their shit, right? Like everything's always everybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just talk about that with them.
Yeah, and how do you respond to that?
How do I respond to what?
When someone like when it's always somebody else's fault.
Well, yeah, no, because it is. I mean, it's often someone else's fault, and that's okay, right? It can totally be Fred's fault, but it's still your responsibility to clean up this mess.
Right. But what I'm saying is for the person who just can't, like emotionally, like for whatever reason, can't own it. And I see someone in the chat.
Yeah.
Some people are not coachable, and true. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I might have to close with that person if it's that bad. But that usually means we need to work on some underlying stuff, right? Yeah. Probably there's a ton of anxiety going on, and we need to start handling the anxiety before we can move up to handling the responsibility. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That happens. That's a wall of awful stuff.
Yeah. We're having some wall of awful at home with my son. So
that's also a maturity thing though. That's developmental. Come on.
Oh man. It's I mean the line of thinking that this week that I was then blamed, and then my wife was blamed, and then my mother-in-law, and then then my great mother-in-law, all because like my great grandma had her mom, which is my son's grandma, and then so it was like this, like the most outrageous form of blame. I was like, "Are you for real right now?" Yeah, he was definitely in a wall of awful there.
All right, kids, like that's my favorite. I love that stuff because now it's just time to play.
Well, I'll tell you, I love it when it's kids. It's so much harder when it's your kid.
Oh yeah, right.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll answer some more questions. All right, and we will be right back. All right, we got some people watching on YouTube, which is kind of cool, and we had some comments there. So just a quick reminder for everyone who was here watching live. If you did just join us, we have 35 people here. I just noticed that. That's great. Shortly after this session at 3 p.m. Central Time, we have our last registration event for our summer coaching groups. We have 8 spots left, 4 in our 12 p.m. section at Central Time, and 4 spots in our 2 p.m. Central Time.
You're so much further ahead than I am.
You'll get there. You'll get there. You have to like not be a principal of a school if you want to like do groups.
I'm running coaching groups this summer. It's just going to be a really condensed sign up.
The one thing, man, that's what it's about. It's focusing on one thing, right? So if you are interested in that, go to ADHDrewired.com/ARC. You can sign up right now.
And if you scroll up towards the top of the chat, you will find that link in there.
That is probably true.
I know, because I put it in there. I put it in again.
I think if Brianna is still listening, she probably dropped that in there as well. All right. Again, if you want to ask questions, please I just totally just lost my train of thought. Like I was in the middle of I'm like, it came out and then it went somewhere else because I had four other thoughts at the same time.
That's a thing.
That's a thing. That is a thing. That's what happens sometimes. All right. So let's come back. Let's identify our next question. And if anyone wants to go live, let us know. See some great questions. Not seeing if anyone wants to go live though. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I can glance occasionally and look to see your questions. If you're watching the replay, we do this every second Tuesday of the month. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button. I'm just curious how many people are here who listen regularly to the podcasts but have never actually hit the subscribe button. Because I find that there's based on the analytics, about 20% of my regular listeners aren't subscribed to the podcast. Isn't that kind of right? Because like when you subscribe to a podcast, it automatically gets updated to your feed. All right. Want to pick the next question and we'll transition back in. Wait, you're muted, Brandon.
I was typing.
Yeah, podcasts work better when unmuted.
That's true. But then there's no clickety clack stuff. I was trying to avoid that.
That's true.
I think we just go with the top one because it's there and we can make it go away if we answer it.
That works. You know, it's a great sort of like meta strategy of like when you don't know where to start, just do something. Right.
I'm with you.
All right. Let me transition back in. All right, we are back, and I just want to share the strategy that we were using to identify the next question because we didn't know where to start. And Brendan suggested let's just go with the top one because then we can get rid of it. And I suggested that when you are overwhelmed by all the questions that you have or all the tasks there to do, doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and ask that question.
My whole family has ADHD. Me, my husband, and both our teenage boys. I struggle to get them to own their ADHD. I like to listen to and read articles and listen to podcasts and use technology to manage my ADHD. And it's really hard to get them engaged in any of that. It has an impact on our whole family. Any suggestions?
I wish this person would be willing to go live so we can, because there's a lot of nuance that I would really want to know sort of about that.
This person is in fact around, so perhaps.
All right, so let us know, throw it in the chat or the Q&A box. Oh, yes, they will go live. So let me get this person queued up. And while I'm doing that, Brendan, why don't you start it off?
Okay, so I navigate this problem a lot because I work with families, and sometimes I'm the solution to this in a very literal way because usually it's the mom. They bring me in and I teach the whole family about ADHD and now everyone's on the same page. And also mom gets some social proof because some random dude just walked into their house and described their life to them. And that doesn't seem like it should be able to happen, but it does. So one thing is you can hire someone, doesn't have to be me. It should totally be me. And they can help you.
Are you plugging your shit in my podcast?
I don't know.
That's cool. That's cool.
And other than that, I think that we need to ask some questions. And luckily, this person is here. So
yes, and I think Brendan and I are both going to. At least I'm going to out it that like we're just referring to this person because I don't want to attempt to pronounce your first name because I'm going to botch it.
Okay. It's Hogai.
Hogai. That's not what I was going to say.
I would have gotten it right. I just keep screwing up which part of the name, how much of the name to say. So,
all right. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about your family of ADHD.
My husband has a different, I think, subtype than I do. I'm the kind that can start projects, and he's the kind that can finish projects. I can't seem to finish them as well as he does, but I am so full disclosure, I'm a family physician, and I found out I had ADHD after my second son was born. So I made it through med school and all this stuff without realizing it, but it was just so hard. It was so difficult. I mean, my husband got diagnosed first because he's got like raging ADHD. which to some degrees I think what attracted me to him to begin with, because he was not a driven person like I was. But I digress. And so, he got diagnosed, got put on medication, and then he realized I had it. And then both our boys have been tested and they have it. And we knew that was highly likely. And we did get an ADHD coach once. And I really got it mainly for my husband, but we both went through it because I thought, let's do it. And she got us to start having a family meeting once a week, which was very good. We still do that more or less almost every week. And that's been very helpful. But the dynamic has become where I've just kind of become a nag, for example, I asked that we all get on Google Calendar so that I could share like invites back and forth. But my husband finds this very annoying, and he doesn't like using the cloud for anything because he thinks it's not secure. And it's just, it makes it so hard, to coordinate everything. So I guess, I know there's one podcast you have that's about, I think, marriage and ADHD or something like that. But every time I try to listen to that one, it won't work. But I'm just, for some reason, I always get an error message.
Delete it and re-download it.
Okay, yeah. I'll do that. Because this has been a huge stress on our marriage, just having ADHD. And I loved what somebody said on one of your podcasts the other day about how ADHD is life on hard mode. I think it's
that was me.
Is that you? It's also marriage on hard mode.
I know that guy.
It's marriage on hard mode too, I think.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Does your husband want to be part of the process of making the things that are hard easier?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He says yes.
Okay. So one of the things that when we're looking at things like any kind of resistance to things like, well, the cloud, it's not as secure, it's like, okay, so yes. And what's a bigger issue, right? Like not having the communication and coordination with what's going on with the family, or the concern of the cloud not being secure. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like you have to sort of weigh each one to see what matters most, right? Because not everything matters equally. And then the other thing is, as you are trying different things out, just because you're trying something out doesn't mean it's going to work. And I think part of that family meeting process really needs to include a coming back to, hey, this is the thing that we were trying this week. Like, let's all check in. How do we think that went?
Right.
All right. What does he suggest?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
What does your husband suggest?
Trying harder, I guess. I mean, I don't mean that facetiously. It's
no, I believe you.
I've said to, he likes to keep a list in his little notebook, but then I never see that notebook around him. I'm really, one of the problems with me going live is my name is so unusual. And if people are listening to this, they're going to know exactly who I am and who my husband is. That's okay.
They won't see it though. I know we see it on Zoom, but
okay, good.
Yeah, so only the people in Zoom who are here live will see that.
Okay. So, I will ask, he's bemoaned stuff all the time. I was supposed to do this. I didn't do it. And I try really hard not to be snarky about it, but I'll say, did you have it written down somewhere? And I just, I don't know how much more basic you can get. I mean, we all have phones. We can use a list on our phone. You can set an alarm on your phone. Now the kids.
Can I poke?
Yeah. Sorry.
Is it okay if I poke a little bit?
Sure.
Probably in soft squishy parts, but it's not your soft squishy parts. So you'll be all right. I may completely be driving down a road that I don't belong on, and I might be wrong, but I've dealt with this often enough that I'm 90% sure that I'm right. Culturally, men are bad at being vulnerable. And in navigating having ADHD or really any sort of disorder, you have to admit to being vulnerable. And so men are often resistant to doing that because it necessitates being open to the idea that you might have a weakness. You might have a kryptonite. And that weakness is part of you. It's not like a rock from another planet that exists somewhere else. It's a piece of who you are. And that means you're vulnerable. And that can be really, really hard to handle. So I'm wondering from the jump around how much of this is born more out of sort of cultural stuff than out of necessarily ADHD and just the difficulty with having the vulnerable stuff that comes with ADHD and the imperfection stuff. Like you wrote it down. Did you do the thing? That if I have ADHD and I've got the shame of ADHD and I'm also a dude who can't handle being vulnerable, someone asking me, did you do that thing? I saw you write it down is like a dagger in my heart. I know, because I've been that guy in the past, and every other month, every 6 months or so, that guy sneaks up on me again and I become him for a minute and a half. But that might be playing a role here, right? And part of why my brain went there was because in your question, you were like, my husband and my 2 sons. And I was like, okay, toxic masculinity, let's go. So that may be in here somewhere. Because it's all dudes and you're the only woman. And that means there's some gender stuff happening here, whether we love it or not. It's still playing a little bit of a role. So just kind of something to wonder about. And then related
let's pause there for a moment, though. Do you suspect that that's playing a part?
I do. I think that really resonates with me, what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. There's a, I don't know if you've gotten on board the Brene Brown bus yet, but there is a Netflix special now with Brene Brown, and maybe you can, give him your husband come sit down, have a beer and watch the show with you. And so maybe that can sort of open up the dialogue about how to talk about hard things.
Yeah. And I like the idea of using beer to get him to do stuff. That really might work. So I'm a big believer in bribery with the kids and with him.
And the other thing is going back to about asking permission and about permission, so ask him, hey, when I'm wondering if you did something, like, how would you like me to bring that question to you?
Right.
And I apologize for going too quickly. I was like, Q&A, be fast. And my other question that sort of relates to that vulnerable side of like, you wrote the thing down, did you do the thing? How many of those things are deal breakers? Like, can some of these things not happen or happen in a different way so that you don't have to feel like you're constantly being the nag, as you said? Is there a way to renegotiate who's doing what and at what time or in what order so that your husband and your sons can be more successful in the things that need to happen around the house, and you can sort of take less control over that stuff, less responsibility for you, more responsibility for them, so everyone feels empowered?
Yes. I think the fine line I run into with that is, I don't want to make them feel disempowered. Like I don't trust them to do stuff, so I'm going to do it myself. And that also can breed resentment in me. So I try to watch that. But I have to say part of my husband's thing is he really likes to do stuff himself. Like he will not ask for help at all. Like, and when he gets overwhelmed, if I say, well, what can I do to help? I think that actually stresses him out because he feels like now I'm asking him to sit there and break it down into steps where I could help. Whereas,
can we play with the language on that?
Sure.
Could you try this out? See what happens. Try saying, is there anything you could delegate to me? Because that puts him in the leadership role.
Okay.
And that might make him more comfortable with what he's doing. He might not even notice that you're helping. Because if I need help, then I'm vulnerable. But if I'm delegating, then I'm the boss.
Got it. That's good. I'll give that a try. Because they apparently, all of them feel I'm a very good delegator.
And I wonder too, even just playing more around with language and really dialoguing about, we have to find words and phrases that we can use that are going to be helpful. I mean, we all have our kind of our shame triggers, right? All of us, myself included, right? Where it's like I can cognitively and rationally recognize that the way I'm feeling based on the question that was just asked is not in proportion to what was just asked, right? Like, so I can own my own stuff. I also know that in those kinds of relationships, when I could say, I'm feeling really like defensive about this. I'm wondering if we can try a different way to approach this and really just look at dialoguing as an experiment, that we're not like so it's really just looking at it from this lens of, all right, like, let's try this other approach. Then tell me how it responds. So maybe your husband can offer a suggestion of how he might be able to hear something better, and you try it, and it might not have any difference of a response. And that's totally okay too, right? So, okay, so that didn't work. What else could we try? And I think if you keep kind of approaching it, all right, what else could we try? I don't know. I think that could, you can maybe stumble on some stuff that might work.
Okay.
So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I'm walking away with at least 3 things that I can try. So thank you.
All right. And there's some stuff in the chat about someone who uses a virtual server, C-file, and something else there. Yeah. So QNAP as a virtual server, it's more secure. And here's the thing, Google, I mean, it's actually a quite secure company. I mean, it's like you don't get to be and stay that big if you don't have like good security. So just,
I mean, who wants to look at his appointments, for crying out loud?
And they already know all of his appointments anyway. It's Google.
No.
Because the people he has appointments with are using Google.
I mean, it's just me.
And maybe that's the overwhelm of the accountability. I know for me, like I throw stuff on my calendar that I want I want my wife to ask me about. Like if I have a phone call that I'm putting off, like it goes on the calendar, and I'm like, that, would you ask me about that? See if I made that call. Right.
Thank
you. And
guys.
if I don't, I still feel kind of about it. But it's like, I also know that, I think a lot of the work around ADHD is less about the specific strategies, and you got to start with dealing with the shame around it, because like that's, you got to peel back those layers first before you really kind of dive into stuff. All right, let's look at another question here. Essentially, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll answer some more questions. And as I was turning my head, I realized that I took I took my cheese out before the thing, and I forgot to eat it. With that, we're going to take a quick break. My cheese. All right.
No.
All right. Do we have, I know there's a couple questions I wanted to get to. Brianna had popped in here to hand me something here. What was this?
Your show, man.
All right. Okay. So a question about medication. A question from Iman had a question I wanted to respond to. So let's dive into that, and then after that, I'll let you pick the next one.
Yeah.
All right. All right, guys. If you're getting value on this, whether you're watching this on YouTube, or you're here live here in Zoom, please consider becoming a patron. We actually, last month, we hit our $800 a month goal. So in the fall, we're going to be offering 2 scholarships, but also because things can fluctuate sometimes on Patreon. We then dipped under the $800 a month again. I'm like, no, but we did it. We hit it. And so that there's some money that we've now earmarked to make available for scholarships. So yeah, yeah. So thank you. $5, $10, $25 a month, whatever feels something that you are able to do. And also every 4th Tuesday of the month, we should do a group coaching session. So this month will be the last time that it will be a perk at the $5 a month level. And then after that, it's going to go up to the $25 a month level, because I want to keep it kind of small and intimate. So kind of think about it like a coaching membership, sort of. Yeah. All right.
Cool. I have to do that. I got to set up a Patreon over the summer. I might need to bend your ear.
It is it's slow. It is a slow and growing kind of thing. It's yeah. You got to have patience with that one. All right. Let me just grab a quick sip of water, and we'll transition it back in.
Yay, water.
I was just looking at the chat that Richard said that he was clearly distracted because now he was trying to install one of the programs that was like recommended in the chat. It's all good. It's all good. We're happy you're here. All right. Let me make that marker here. We'll transition in. All right, we are back, and we got time for just a few more questions. And I want to start with Iman's question. Iman said that I just started medication, and I'm feeling a benefit from it, but concerned about side effects from taking it long term. Do most people with ADHD take their medication every day, or skip weekends, holidays, days when they don't need to, quote, get lots of stuff done? All right, so people who take medication, I am someone who takes medication, do take it every day. I have been taking medication now. I am almost on my 20th year of taking a stimulant medication, and I have not grown 3 eyes. I have not grown an extra limb. I've grown a podcast. I've grown a business. I've grown a family. I finished degrees. I've done all kinds of things that I am certain that I would not have been able to do without medication. So yes. So, and the research actually shows that, it used to be recommended about taking like vacations and weekends off, and actually finding that can actually impact the longevity that a medication can be effective for. Right. So unless you are having to take a break for some like another health reason, it is recommended that you stay consistent with your medication and continue to take it. And there is a fair amount of longitudinal data that shows that this medication is safe and effective when used and prescribed as directed. I mean, stimulants for treating hyperactivity in boys starting in the 1940s, we started then. Medication in this class would not stick around for this long if it was not both safe and effective. If you're saying you're concerned about side effects and are these like in theory, or are you actually having side effects, right? Like, if you're having side effects, talk to your doctor about that, right? Because there are a number of different, there's a lot of different medications for ADHD, right? And it is a little bit of trial and error, but it's statistical trial and error. So we look at the probability of one thing being effective, and then if not this, we then try that. We first try at adjusting medication dosages before we try a different type of medication. So yeah, I think that taking medication regularly on a daily basis it's the way to go. Brendan, any other thoughts on that?
I took my ADHD medication this morning, but I'll be honest, I didn't take it yesterday morning, mostly because I have ADHD. And I straight forgot, but it was the first time I missed a medication in a very long time. So the most common reason that I might miss taking my ADHD meds, it's not even that I forgot. Usually it's if I, for some reason, oversleep. If it's after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, I know it's going to ruin my sleep for the rest of the night. And if I'm not waking up till 9 or 10, it's the weekend. And I don't know why I'm waking up that late, but that usually it's 7. But if it happens that I miss it until that late and it's the weekend anyway, and I can kind of take a day that I'm not as on the ball as I need to be, then I might skip it. But even if it's a weekday and for some reason I'm like, oh no, it's 9 a.m. I didn't take it yet, I'm still taking it.
Yeah. Greg on YouTube said that his medication helps tremendously with his patience. He's come to call it his patience pill. He says it makes him realize when his brain is overwhelmed, when he loses patience. Yeah. So it affects everybody a bit differently. Mm-hmm. And the other thing to also look at is when we're even in forums like this or in our Facebook community, I think it's helpful to hear about other people's experience on medication, but also understand that one person's experience is not going to be your experience, right? There are people who had really bad responses to medications. There are people who love that particular medication, right? So we know we have to look at group averages, and where things go well and go from there.
And talk to a professional. Don't ask the yahoos on Facebook. Talk to a doctor. Talk to a nurse who can prescribe. Talk to a pharmacist.
Yeah.
Do not underestimate the power of your local pharmacist. Don't feel like I can't get to my prescribing doctor, so I can't get this answer. Pharmacists know often more than the doctors do about medication, because they're doing medication, and depending on what doctor you're talking to, they might be doing a whole lot of stuff if it's like a pediatrician or a general practitioner. Yeah. So don't underestimate the power of a pharmacist.
And nurse practitioners can be great too. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the phrase I was looking for that I failed miserably at coming up.
It's all right. That happens. You know, I mean, because it's like most psychiatrists, unfortunately, you have like 15 minutes. And by the time you've organized your thoughts to actually say what you want to share with your psychiatrist, your meeting's over. Right. Mm-hmm. And like, that sucks. I deal with that too. And it can be frustrating, which is why it's helpful to go in with notes. You know, so if you're like, oh, I want to remember to tell my psychiatrist this thing, have a reminder go off at the time that you have your next appointment. All right. Let's see what else do we got. We got a few more questions here. Do you have one picked out? Otherwise, I can just grab it from the top.
Here's one.
Okay.
If you're in a meeting and you're not using a computer, how do you get your paper notes into Evernote or whatever app you use?
All right. So there's a couple of ways you can do that.
I would just take a picture of it.
Yeah, and Evernote actually has a pretty good, I think, OCR technology, meaning, so if you scan it with the Evernote app, you, depending on your, I mean, I have chicken scratch for handwriting, and I can search my notes that I've handwritten, and it can find them most of the time, nice. Which is pretty impressive. So that is a thing you can do. Also, take that as an opportunity to go through your notes and actually process your notes. I like extract the action items and then put them into your system of whether it's your task lists, your calendar, right? Because really, like, one of the things that happens with a lot of people is they take notes and then they don't do anything with them, you know, and buried within those notes are a couple action items. And so really you're probably best off taking time to process what just happened in that meeting, right? Identify what those action items are, and then you can probably get rid of the note. Mm-hmm. So that's that's how I would approach it.
I got another one.
Okay.
So if I have an idea, I get off track. That's the whole question.
That's the whole question.
Yeah. Write it down. That's what sticky notes are for. Oh, I have an idea. I just write it down on a sticky note and then go back to what you're doing.
I think this was related to the question about getting confused in a meeting.
Oh, okay. All right.
I feel like we just like cracked the case. That was exciting. Right. Yeah. And again, just to reiterate that, you know, it's keeping your finger on the word that's going to help you stay focused. And also coming back to permission, asking people to rein you in if you're going off, you know, on tangents. Mm-hmm. All right. What else we got? I'll go to Erica's.
Sure, if I can find it. Right up at the top. All right. Can you describe some tips, tools, insights around dealing with constant and second-to-second distraction that comes with ADHD when planning projects, anything small and large? It's hard to move forward when you seem to be moving side to side.
This made me think of the outside of medication. The most important thing we can do is set up our environment to be conducive for what we need to do, right? Because so much about this is about environmental modification, right? So like for me, I am highly distracted by noise, right? I have like bat ears, like BAT.
That's why he wears the headphones, so you can't see.
Like even when they're not even on, I have the Bose noise canceling headphones. They're like always on, because if I can hear someone 2 offices down, like my brain just amps that up, and now I'm hearing their conversation, and like whatever I'm trying to work on isn't happening because all I'm doing is listening to that conversation that I don't want to be listening to, right? So I throw on these, you know, sometimes I'll put on, you know, little background music, sometimes just white noise. If I'm really highly distracted, I'll actually take these little foam earplugs, put them in my ears, and then put the headphones on top of them. And it's like it being in like a sound like isolation chamber. And like sometimes that's what I need. You know, setting up your physical environment to minimize how much visual distraction there is. And sometimes it's doing sort of basic arithmetic of subtraction, like count the number of things you're distracted by. Now, what can you do to remove those things that you're distracted by that is not related to the task you're working on right now? Mm-hmm. Right. You know, signs outside your door that say, you know, do not disturb. It's also the value of trying to work in a clean space. I say that as like, don't do what I do. It's like in theory, it's like, yes, I love working in a clean space. I have a hell of a time maintaining a clean space at my desk. But it's like, but I know it's one of those things where it's like, I don't think I noticed all like the visual clutter until it's gone. And I'm like, I'm so focused right now and it feels amazing.
Also, manage the people around you, right? Like, do you have kids? Do you have a spouse? Do you have an annoying coworker? You might need to be able to communicate with them around what you're doing and how easy it is for you to get distracted or how hard that's going to be on you. One of the things I do is I use cups. So I have different colored cups. If the green cup is up, that means you can go ahead and distract me and it's fine and I don't care. Do whatever you want. If the yellow cup is on top, that means it better be important. Whatever you're interrupting me for, it better be important. You can still interrupt me, but think about it. And if the red cup is on top, someone better be bleeding. Otherwise
there will be someone bleeding.
Right, exactly. But it's a great little visual cue. And then I don't talk to anybody. No one has to come over to me and say, hey, can I ask you a question? Because there's these cups that are letting them know what to do with it. I use those cups for all kinds of things. But that's my
one of the things that with Brianna that my assistant we've kind of figured out is that I told her if she hears me typing, if the fingers are actively moving, do not ask me a question until there's like at least like a few seconds, 10 seconds of like a pause, right? Because if I'm in the middle of a thought writing and she asks a question, that thought's gone, gone, never to be gotten back again.
And then another thing on the inverse of this question, right, is sometimes if you're trying to do something and you keep getting interrupted by it, wonder if there's maybe some self-sabotage going on. Like, are you trying to do this particular activity consistently at a time when it's just not going to work? Like, do you hate to write emails, so you're always trying to write emails when your 5-year-old just woke up from a nap and is going to want your attention? Is that a thing? Because sometimes that's a thing. I know I've gone through phases where I've had stuff that I'm like, I keep doing this when I know my boys are home and going to bother me. So I think I probably don't want to do this. Is it something I have to do, or is it something I can kick the can on? What's going on?
And then there's one other strategy, and I use this sometimes on the computer especially if I'm going to be doing something that I know has the potential for kind of rabbit hole exploration. Mm-hmm. I will put on my computer 2 sticky notes on the corners of the screen. One tells me this is what I'm doing, and the other tells me what I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be very, very helpful for us, because when we're like, everything is important when it's right in front of us, right? Sometimes we need that reminder of like, no, you're not doing that thing right now. You're doing this thing right now. Right. So keeping that sort of the objective in mind can be really, really helpful. All right, let's go to another question. Let's go to April's question. She asks, when doing house chores or organizing rooms in your home, how do you break the chores down so you don't feel so overwhelmed and give up on everything? Good question.
Get a bunch of index cards. Hear me out. Get a bunch of index cards. Write your chores down on the index cards. It can be something as simple as pick up 5 articles of clothing and put them in the laundry. Now you have an index card stack of common household chores. Leave it somewhere it's useful. Pull a card, do whatever the card says. Keep pulling cards till you can't handle it anymore, and then you're done.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about too is the more we can break things down to its simplest form, right? I think that the easier it can be for dealing with overwhelm, or also like asking people, I'm overwhelmed. Where do I start? Just like asking somebody else can be really, really helpful. I think I give the example often about, emptying the dishwasher. If you're like I got to do the dishes and I into the dishwasher, and it's just like this couch has never been more comfortable. And, I feel like I'm a magnet on the couch because I can't seem to get myself up. But you have to do the dishes. So what's the one thing you can do that's going to make it easier? Stand up. Mm-hmm. Once you do that, what's the next one thing you can do to make it easier? Walk
Play
towards the
some
kitchen.
Queen on the radio.
What song?
I've been doing a lot of It's a Kind of Magic, that album. That's been my jams right now.
Nice. Yeah, and so just keep asking yourself, what's the one thing I can do? Because often it's just like, it's sort of like we're like a machine that like first gear, it's really hard to get out of neutral, right? But like once we get going, like we can keep going. So don't think about, I gotta empty all the dishes, I gotta clean the entire kitchen. Like focus on the next thing, entering the space of the kitchen. Then the next thing, opening the dishwasher. Then the next thing, putting a dish away, right? And then like usually by the next couple steps, like you got it going. The one thing I'll say too is be cautious of broom bouncing. You know, like you go to put one thing away from one room to another room, and then you're doing something in that room, which brings you to another room. And you've been like busy cleaning up for the last 2 hours, but you have no visual evidence of it because there's stuff everywhere still. Right.
And that's another reason that music is useful, because it's going to anchor you to whatever room the music is playing in. At least it does for me, because I wind up going back to where the music is.
Unless you have headphones and then.
Yeah, no, I don't do it that way. Everyone's listening to my Queen.
All right. That was a good question. I hope that was helpful. Let's see. We got Michael. What advice would you have for someone who only accepted that he has ADHD after recently being diagnosed as gifted? My main issue seems to be social interactions, making mistakes. Was diagnosed ADHD 25 years ago, but doubted when the meds didn't seem to work. Didn't see myself as ADHD as depicted in popular books.
Well, I mean,
it's a lot to unpackage there.
There is, yeah. I'm going to go back to what I talked about earlier and circle back to it's hard to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. But if I'm a superhero because I'm gifted, it's easier for me to be vulnerable. So there's a little balancing thing that's happening there potentially. I could be totally wrong. But
so I'm going to call you out on that one a little bit.
Do it.
So giftedness and gifted, I think, is this weird sort of reverse stigma, right?
Right. I'm with you.
High IQ is one feature of giftedness. Mm-hmm. Another feature of giftedness is that you take in the world so profoundly intensely that life can be very overwhelming. Right. So I think it's one of these things where it's like, yeah, gifted sounds like we're bragging giftedness, right? It's hard, right? Having giftedness can be hard.
Yeah. Don't misunderstand me. I was being stereotypical in that statement, and intentionally though, because it's about the perception and the stereotypes bring the perception. Right. I realize that giftedness goes deeper than that.
And I would encourage you to look at books that aren't for just adults with ADHD, but look at books that are for twice exceptional, for giftedness with ADHD, because I think that's a whole other beast that is really worthwhile, because there are things that ADHD may not explain that giftedness does. And then you sort of, it's like we want to neatly put each thing into its own category, but life doesn't actually work that way. We are just a blend of different things that interact together. So yeah, I mean, that's explore other areas. I know there's I know there are podcasts on giftedness. The experience I've often heard around giftedness is that people who are gifted experience the world with intensity. Right. It's more about intensity than like just high IQ. So yeah, I don't know if that gives you something to sort of think about. But I think that the more we understand about our experience, the more it can make sense of the past and help us kind of move forward with a greater understanding around that.
Yeah. And also, like, if you're trying to accept that you have ADHD, but the descriptions don't seem to match who you are, of course you're not going to accept that. But right. When the description gets more accurate because you're like, oh, twice exceptional, now this makes more sense. It's going to be easier to accept it. And also, how much does it matter that you didn't accept it back in the day if you are accepting it now? You don't need to carry that I didn't accept it yesterday. You don't need to carry that forward necessarily. Yeah. You can leave that where it is and move forward and have a different experience now.
Yeah. And I think too, the more models you could see of people who are accepting it, I think that's also helpful. Mm-hmm. Right. and we have a lot more questions, but there's one that I wanted to sort of try to address because I don't actually have the answer to, but I have an idea that's been sort of percolating in my mind. So it's Sheila asks, any tips on being or becoming less sensitive to family members' patronizing remarks about my ADHD symptoms? I need to learn how to ignore them, their remarks, or learn how to not let it get to me. I told them it could be hurtful, but I think they just blow it off, and that I'm just being too seriously the ADHD.
Taking it too seriously.
Thank you. Taking it too seriously. Well, the funny thing is that as I was reading this, I actually realized when I first read it, I read it differently than what it actually was when I read it. So I'll kind of go with this. Okay.
Answer both of them.
Yeah, I'll answer. Well, I remember both of them.
So
what I read the first time when I just sort of quickly skimmed it was about sensitivity to feedback. Right. And so we know there's a lot of discussion in the ADHD community about this rejection sensitive dysphoria. And this probably is connected to that, or maybe it's connected to that.
You're coming around on that one, huh?
So, well, here's sort of what I'm thinking. Yeah. I mean, I think it's still, I don't know. It's still like this murky kind of thing, but and I think anything that can validate someone's experience, I think is valuable. Right. But I think when we're talking about it from a clinical kind of research perspective, I think it's important that we're all talking about the same thing, so we can have a better idea about how to address things that work, right, and have a better sort of knowledge base of why. So this year, I've been doing a ton of reading with my ears on all issues around leadership, right? And one of the things that I have been sort of making this shift in this understanding around, when leading teams, how important it is to encourage debate, even when it's volatile at times, right? And really look at if the goal is a process and an end result, that if we just have people who are agreeing with us all the time, like that is actually not going to be helpful. So when I think about, so I don't know, maybe for me, it's about like greater good. And if I understand the outcome and that the going through a messy process can result in a better outcome, I found myself, as I'm learning these things, better able to handle in conversations when someone has a different point of view than I do. Where in the past I would be like, this person isn't agreeing with me and I'm feeling tense about it, and it's, and I want this person to just like see my point of view. Where it's, what I've been doing is really appreciating dissent more, and I'm sort of looking at it as the skill to develop. And when we look and see that the outcome that we can get from a little bit of rumbling around certain things can be really, really valuable. For me anyways, I've been feeling less sensitive to stuff that might be taken as criticism or feedback. And so, as I said, I don't have the exact answer to that. It's sort of been this thing that I've been kind of figuring out in my head and thinking through and working through. Because I think I've noticed that as I've been practicing these things, I'm just becoming less sensitive to dissenting ideas and opinions. Mm-hmm. The other, to kind of go back to answering the question that was actually asked, is, first of all, I think that's hard. I understand the challenge of being in an environment where you're feeling regularly criticized, and that sucks. That is a not fun, shitty feeling to have, and and you're telling them. So it's like, continue talking to them. Maybe see about getting a family therapist that you guys can all maybe go see. And maybe also get curious about the things that they are saying, and really try to put on that like the translator of like, all right, this person says this, they really said that in a really crappy way that was hurtful. Assuming the best of intentions. What do I think this person is trying to tell me? And is there something I can learn from what they are trying to tell me? Right? And it's hard. I mean, that's a really tough thing to do. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, pure speculation, but Also, I don't know where Sheila is with regard to her journey in ADHD. I know that when I first got diagnosed, it was kind of all I could think about. So it came up in conversation a lot. And then I started doing it professionally and it came up in conversation less, which is weird. But I know it got annoying for people around me. It was like, shut up, we know. And it's depending on where she is on that journey. If she's in that phase where it's like, this is a big deal to me and I'm always talking about it, it might be that you're bringing it up and then they're coming at you because they're kind of like trying to say, shut up, we know, but they're not doing it in a way that is kind. And I could be totally wrong, and that might have nothing to do with this, but that's the only thought I had that you didn't already cover.
All right. Here's what I want to do. We have a few more questions, and I'm looking at the time right now.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna bring this one in and wrap this one up. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, and we're gonna post the recording of the unedited video for our patrons at the $5 a month level. So we're gonna have a few more questions. There's a question about being diagnosed at age 58. I'm wondering about if their symptoms are getting worse. There was a question about bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. And then there was another question about schedule changes. So I'm going to try to answer those questions. Those will be available for our patrons. So guys, thank you everyone for coming, for sharing, for asking your questions, and for supporting what we're doing here on ADHD Rewired. Just as a reminder, you can support this work. If you want to also hear what else the responses to these other questions, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And you can check out the responses to those questions there. For everyone who is watching this live or the replay on YouTube, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy this, and maybe we'll stream this again on YouTube next month instead of Facebook. So until next time, thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to make a marker here in my audio and let me end the stream to YouTube. Stop live stream and